we work as a startup. Wanted to quickly bring you some credentials on what we've done. My name is Mahesh. I'm from Games to Win. We're a game publisher. Been in the business for about 5 years now. Focusing on mobile games in the past 2 years. The reason we believe that the reason I'm here up here on the podium is that we've had a couple of successes on our plate in the past 2 years. Most recent of which was a game called Parking Frenzy, a game which we're really proud of. I think that's why you see people like me walking around with this T-shirt. It topped the US app stores, lasted there for about 2 weeks. It was a good hit for us, and it's got about, the game on the iOS and Android has got about 12 million downloads so far. About 2 years ago, we launched another game called Supermom, much more casual, targeted more at kids. That was the #2 app in worldwide as well. And I'm here to tell you the story about how we actually got to where we are and the kind of tricks of the trade that we realized on how to get our apps up there on the app stores. None of these, just as a side note to this point, none of these apps have been promoted with any money, so we've not spent any money on marketing. So I thought that would be something interesting that we could share with the community. So this presentation was actually prepared about 2 months ago when we first had success with Parking Frenzy. There are a lot of other learnings that we've had since then with more games that we've created and our experiences launching and discovering new tools as we went along. So one of the key things we figured out with Parking Frenzy was the need to was to actually, we launched the game on Android. What that helped us was it helped us test market the game as well. What you typically find on the Android space is that many users are typically not as critical, or they are critical, but I think that they're not heard of as much as an iOS user is. So you might launch a game on the Android market and Google Play, and you would see you would get your criticism, you get the brickbats about the game, but it's not publicized too much. So it's always a good idea to maybe start launch a game of yours if you have the technology or the capability to do so, to launch it first on the Android Play Store, followed by an iOS launch. It helps you refine your product when you hit the more discerning iOS user. One of the tricks we learned when we launch our games, one of the things that we do when we launch our games is to actually just pop it up for about a week or so to see how the app picks up on its own. So this is a graph that we take from a tool called App Figures. There are many similar tools like this. App Annie, for example, is another one. Where we put up the app and we just look at the trends that the game is having. So once you see that the app is actually picking up on itself, then it gives you a good indicator of what's going to be happening. So we don't recommend doing any promotion at all until you put the app out, see whether there could be something critically wrong with the way you promoted the app or the way you've described the application on the App Store. So just put it out, give it some time, see what happens, look at your numbers to see what's happening amongst the various charts that it's trending in, and just keep a watchful eye on it for about a week or so. An important thing we did with Parking Frenzy, in the case of Parking Frenzy, was a game that I think it was a Saturday morning. We quickly had a look at the App Store numbers, and we just saw the game was going berserk. Lots of people downloading it. Lots of critical comments as well. So it was an early morning, and we realized that the kind of comments were not necessarily pleasant about the game crashing at times, about some problems, technical problems the game was having, which, you can ask some of the team in the office here. We spend nights and nights testing a game, and that's Murphy's Law, I guess. It's somebody's law. It's basically mobile games law, that you can never make a game perfect, right? You're always going to have problems, and it's always going to crop up. So a good way to find out what's happening and what is not is essentially have a look at your comments from your users. Respect those opinions as well, and obviously notice trends that people are talking about. I guess in this case, we always had a common complaint that there was something about the loading screen taking too long. And so you notice, like, I think within a couple of days, there are about 29,000 ratings in a short span of time. So it told us that people were reviewing the game, they were playing the game, they were liking it, but there were critical comments cropping up. I think 81 1-stars out of almost one quarter of the comments were negative. So the idea, the reason I brought that up is that typically on the App Store, you might have the mentality that if I make an update, it probably takes about a week or so to get a fix out. So what's the point of fixing the game? What we realize is that that's not the case. If you know that there's a critical problem that you at least have an inclination on how to solve. In this particular case, if you look at the problem, people were complaining about a long loading time. And to be honest, all we did in this fix which happened 2 days later was just put a screen, please wait, and comments about the loading time to totally stop. So what happened was that the game then started having fewer negative comments, and obviously the game gets downloaded more and more. But the key here is that do not assume that it's going to take a week or 10 days for an update to go through. We put this update out, sent a mail to Apple requesting if it's possible. There's no guarantee that it will happen, but they typically are. They did help out in this time around, and I think the update was launched within 2 or 3 days. The next step, once you know that the game is has picked up, start listening to chatter. We've found that kids, at least the games that we build are targeted towards kids, let's say early teens, sorry. They tweet a lot, and these are we've had phenomenal, lots of positive comments coming in on Twitter. So I'm just showing you a couple of the comments that we've been receiving from time to time. And it told us that there were two things that we found out about Parking Frenzy through these tweets was that lots of girls love to play the game. They found that it was almost a 50-50 mix. I mean, you'd expect a parking or a car game to be more male dominated, but we found that girls love the game. For some reason, I'm addicted to Parking Frenzy. Talking about how challenging it is to actually park a car in real life. And I think what we begun to realize is that we actually cracked a nice mechanic to actually get the steering working. To be honest, there were problems with it as well on the Android devices, on the older legacy devices. But people loved the fact that it was a fun, interesting game to play. So the point I'm trying to make here is that listen to chatter. I mean, it's not just about publishing a game and hoping that it goes up the App Store. Whether the game is a hit or not, listen to the chatter, put up a Twitter handle if required, reach out to the community, and which is what the next step we did was. We started reaching out to the community, making sure that we have a kit. You should plan in advance in terms of what are you going to tell these users. How do you handle the negative comments? How do you keep the positive folks, the guys who like the game? How do you get them to promote the game as well? So we had a kit in place. We had a particular person. In this case, our CEO Alok was actually handling a lot of the communication that was going on. The key here was about having a consistent message, making sure that you responded on time, and taking any feedback that you had, negative or positive, and making sure that you had a response to give to them. We found that that community helps a lot, and we believe that actually helped the game. Like I said, no money spent on advertising. We believe that virality actually helped pick up the game. People were saying, we were stunned when people said, okay, just bought a new iPhone and getting Parking Frenzy, Angry Birds, and I think Fruit Ninja on the phone, getting those 3 games installed on the phone. So it spoke a lot about at least the popularity or at least the hearsay of the game. Here's an interesting trend we noticed as well. So this is the plot of Parking Frenzy. You'll find a lot of correlation between amongst countries. So in this particular case, and we've actually seen it in many of our other games, whether they've not done as well or not, is that typically you find that the game does well in a particular geography. In this case, Australia, and we find that it happens very often, especially on these mainstream games. Picks up in Australia, you see it trending up the chart in Australia. Then you start seeing it pick up in England, and finally, if you're lucky, it picks up in the US as well. But there is definitely a trend that you see. It picks up in one country, and it automatically just starts pushing off. So we believe, our theory is that the app stores do, they do coordinate amongst one another, and they start promoting apps in different ways. But the key is that, and obviously people start talking about the game as well. The key thing is that this is useful because obviously this is something that we noticed, and how do we leverage that data? What we're doing nowadays is actually if you're launching a new game, launch it in certain geographies. If you're launching a new game, don't put it on the US App Store immediately. Put it up, and let's say in Australia, Middle East, we found that the popular games do well in Saudi Arabia, in oddly enough, in Israel, Scandinavian bloc, any of the countries over there. So pilot test your game in these audiences, because you're never going to get enough in your playtest group. You're never going to get enough feedback about the game. You're never going to see the game in a live environment. So try to maybe launch a game in a particular geography, see how it works in a week or 10 days, fix your game, put in tools like Mixpanel, Flurry, a lot of data collection, as much as data collection as you possibly can get your hands onto, and determine patterns of what users are doing with the product. Another key thing to think about is also localization. We found our game does very well in Japan and Russia. We were slow to get off the running blocks, but the idea is that, with the data that you have in terms of where the game is being picked up, I think going forward, we know that we will be launching new games which have certain languages packs ready, so that it helps us build momentum in certain geographies better than they would have without. This is the key thing that it's been inculcated in everything that we do. We don't, we are at least our online business is purely advertising driven. So we get lots of folks to come and advertise on our website, but we do not spend any money on it. And the reason is that we don't see that there's any logic behind advertising when you don't have a positive return on investment or a lifetime value to your product. So what I mean by this is that our game is basically advertising driven. So we generate revenues through advertising. So there's no point spending advertising money to chase advertising dollars. And instead, we are launching virtual goods games, games that have got in-app purchases. And in those cases, we would probably want to experiment with some sort of advertising. But otherwise, if you're doing a free app, you're doing a demo app, we would not recommend spending any money on that advertisement. Spend more time on your QC, spend more time on development tools, spend more time on playtesting, but not too much on advertising. Here's the key. So now that we did launch Parking Frenzy, the game did relatively well. These are the numbers on the US App Store. I'm sorry, on the app stores. The key is to have a product roadmap. So what we've started doing with many of our games is that, let's say we're launching a game. There's a game called Volcano Flight Frenzy that has launched, and we're making a new version of it. But it always has we have a target for launch, and there's always a secondary product, a second iteration that we plan for as well. So the key being that have the game design document, have that part of the art ready. After you launch a game, make sure that you have your game design document for the second phase ready. Have any prototype art that you want, any gameplay changes that you plan to have discussed and formalized, so that if the game becomes a hit, you should be able to go the day you start seeing that the peak. Like in this particular case, by the 5th of June, you realize that, look, I need to get my team working on the update. So this is key, not just this is key obviously because it helps retain your users because of the feedback that you receive from all the comments and other streams that you use to communicate with your users. It helps you improve your product as well. So it's always important to keep an update plan. So in Parking Frenzy's case, we've got it's a godsend. What has happened is godsend. So we've actually planned a long pipeline for the next year around the theme as well as around the title Parking Frenzy. So I lied a bit when I spoke about advertising. So the reason I bring this up is when we found that we did a lot of cross marketing. So when you find that you have a hit app that fits a particular target demographic, use that audience to actually promote any other apps you have. It's very. I mean, I think Zynga popularized this with the way they cross-promoted applications from one app to the other on Facebook. So likewise, it's important that your app is ready to cross-promote. The reason I've spoken to a couple of developers outside, and many of them said that, look, this is a paid game. We're only going to be making money through in-app purchasing. We don't believe in advertising. The reason I think you should, the reason you should be putting advertising into your game is that you might want to use it for your own inventory. So our recommendation is to go make sure you've got stuff like either an ad mob or a mopub or some network that allows you to do house ads, so that if you have got a game that's only making money through, let's say, in-app purchases and you're happy with it, when the time comes and you launch a second game, you have that inventory available to you to make use of at zero cost. So what we did with Parking Frenzy was we started promoting our game called Supermom. Remember the 2-year-old game the game that we published in 2010? We started promoting it in Parking Frenzy. So that's a screenshot on the right of the Parking Frenzy end screen with a creative promoting Supermom. And like magic, and the way it's designed anyway, we started seeing Supermom picking up on the charts as well. So it's important to make sure that you have that little Trojan horse in your game. There's nothing wrong with it. Put in an ad unit. You might not believe in ad revenues for your game, but make sure you have the capability to do so. And it's not just about having an ad unit, but being smart about the creatives. So so there's you need to understand your audience. So because we knew that the people who played Parking Frenzy, 50% of them were females. Obviously, we couldn't target them specifically, but 50% is a nice chunk. So we started creating targeted creatives. So for example, so you can park, can you handle a baby? So that's the kind of ad that we started pushing into the game. And these are ads that we've actually put into, let's say, Supermom to promote Parking Frenzy as well, when we found that there was a nice momentum that's being built. But importantly, have a look at the CTRs. You'll find that whatever creative you put out, try to talk to your audience. Try to run a campaign for about 3 or 4 days. Look at the CTR, the click-through rates. Figure out which ads are performing, which ads aren't. Clean it up, remove them, ditch them if required. Those are key 10 points. I mean, this presentation, this modified presentation is not up, but I will be hosting it at a later point on our portal. But there were other discoveries that we started making about that important point that we'd like to bring up about marketing your applications. I think one of the biggest challenges many people see is the challenge of discovery when it comes to your applications. So screenshots. Your app store is your port of call for your application. We used to just put up. We used to make games, put up a screenshot and say, "Wow, the art is amazing," and or at least we believe the art was amazing. We put up the art, and that's all we did. But try to use that medium to communicate as much as you can. So each of your screenshots, I think you get 5 screenshots on the App Store. Try to communicate as much as you can about the game. iOS 6 has opened up a new, people talk about a new algorithm that they use to actually help games get discovered. So we're working with we're using a tool called Searchman. It's very early to say how effective that is going to be, but basically it helps you SEO your app store. So if you look at the new interface when you search for applications on the App Store, you don't really have you don't have the categories. Things have changed a bit. Each time you look at, if you do a search, you only see one screenshot. There's not a row of 5 applications. So it's very important that you try to get, if a person searches for a parking game, you want your game to appear first. So look for, you need the preciseness in the description of the game. So in summary, use tools. Try to understand how the App Store uses your keywords to rank the application. An important thing is, so you've got tools like free app of the day. If you have a paid app, run a promotion in one of these if possible. That actually does help get discoverability of the application. Again, because of that loop that happens. If the game has got sufficient viral hooks within it, if the game is promoted for free, people will start downloading and start talking about it. Motivate your users to talk about your game. So and this is a screenshot of Parking Frenzy. We've got the if you look on the right hand side, we've got these buttons to tweet about the game, to share the game on Facebook. Our personal experience has been across all our games is that Twitter actually works very well as opposed to even email or Facebook. Try to get the rate me button in the face of the user as much as possible. We started doing experiments. Being gamers, we assume that a user would not like to rate a game if they did not complete a level, or if they fared badly. That's not the case. People might just find the game difficult or challenging. So do not shy away from showing the opportunity to rate your app. That rating does help your game get promoted, get discovered better. People look at ratings when they decide to download an application. Push notifications, be relevant. So make sure when you build the application, we've got a template right now. All our games have got a checklist of 20 things to do with your application. One of them is to include, to request for permissions for push notifications. Once you've got that permission, make sure Obviously, make sure that you're relevant with the messaging that you do send out. If you do send too many notifications that are irrelevant or are too spammy, you're going to see your application uninstalled. So with that capability, there obviously comes a lot of responsibility. There's one point I forgot to add in the slide. I just thought about it this morning, was that a game center integration. You know, if you're building a game and you realize that it's a fun game, you find that it is challenging amongst your friends. iOS 6, I'm sure all of us have heard about it. It's got Facebook integrated into it. Players can challenge one another's. So and it handles all the heavy duty work for you. So all you got to do is just make sure you have Game Center integrated. The reason that helps is that, you know, the Game Center UI enables users to rate your application as well. So you're going to be able to see, there's another touch point that users use, at least the hardcore or the gamer that wants to score is going to be using. So if you've got a relatively challenging game, competitive game, make sure you care about the Game Center. So look at the achievements and have sensible achievements that your game will allow users to obtain. Interesting icon art as well. Sensible leaderboards, maybe bifurcate leaderboards by time, by type of game activity as well. You know, and having said all that, I mean, those are nice key points to have. I think one of the most important things, I mean, ultimately, the key thing you have to strive for, again, I mean, if you do meet someone from Games 2 in here, I think it's all about striving for product experience. People talk about when, you know, we built about 30 games before we actually had success with Parking Frenzy. To be honest, I think our third game was Supermom. That motivated us to say, okay, let's continue. And we spent about a year and a half building another 30 games. They did not do well, but I guess what's happened is that it's important that you keep innovating on improving on the product experience. I use the word product. I initially mentioned strive for a great game, but I think it's more than just the game experience. You might have a great game mechanic. You might have great game art. If anybody has played first version of Parking Frenzy, it looks like the racetracks of Matterhorn. I think I met some developers outside. It looked terrible. The art was terrible, but people loved the gameplay. They loved that experience. So it's not always about. I don't think you should only worry about the gameplay. That is important, but there is an overall experience that you have to think about. You know, if again, look at the tutorial. How easy is it for a user to get involved into the game? How easy is it for a user to understand what's happening within the game? Are the instructions sufficiently? Are the buttons sufficiently clear enough? Is the experience of let's say the reaction that you see when you click on a particular game on a particular button? Is it intuitive? So a lot of things that you need to, a lot of tiny details that you need to keep your eye and ear open to. Playtest your game. This again, I can't stress how important this is, especially outside of your comfort team. You know, we try to keep a group of people who are working on the game independently of. Sorry, we try to keep the game producer and the production team independent of the team that actually playtests it. Some of our partners here have been through hell with us because of the changes that we've had to give after a round of review by the playtest team. And like I said, it's not, and even this is not sufficient. So you know, there are tools like TestFlight to actually promote your application to a set of users who are keen to test games. And you know, if you try that experiment where you launch a game in certain geographies, you probably even have a larger audience to play with. And I think key to what we're discovering is that, you know, as gaming moves towards the mobile phone, I think 3 years ago when we entered the flash gaming market, 4 years ago when we entered the flash gaming market, it was called the casual gaming market, where companies like big fish were ruling the roost, and we cropped up as well, and it was called the casual gaming market. We're finding that, you know, the audience right now is hyper casual. You've got grandmothers to 5-year-olds playing games. They're experiencing it. So there is a huge opportunity that exists out there. And if you're going to see your numbers pick up, it's important to address each one. I mean, obviously, don't worry too much. If your game is targeted at teens, don't worry too much about a 5-year-old nephew of yours. But try to make sure that do understand that it's not necessarily going to be a hardcore game that does well. There is a market and there is a demand for much more casual games. So a quick summary of what I've on key points. So I think key is your app. Never, your product is most important. I think marketing is secondary. I hope with the tips that we mentioned in this presentation, any of us can actually go about marketing their game in the way we have. Listen to consumers, right? So this is important. Build the app for your consumers, not for yourself. So when you build a game, I'm sure your game designers. So we've had situations where the initial idea behind the game, the final product is not the same as the initial idea behind the game. We've even ditched many games because we just felt that it would not fly amongst the audience. But the key here is to listen to consumers. They could be your testers. They could be the guy they could be your wife. They could be your grandmother, your neighbor, your friend over in the US, anybody. Can't reiterate it. I don't know whether we'll have to remove this statement once from our game because we rely so much on advertising money. But it's a waste to actually get the game up. If the game will promote itself, the game will get picked up on its own if you follow some of the things that we mentioned earlier. Once it does, if you want to obviously get increased volumes, yeah, I don't see any harm in spending the money on advertising, but we wouldn't recommend it just to get your game up on the App Store to get it discovered. Ratings are important. We've seen that in our game. We've seen games like ranked 150, 120 with 0 ratings, or let's say 10 ratings. The game doesn't continue getting downloaded because I guess with so many games out there, consumers just want to get they want to use crowdsourcing to get their own games themselves. So they'd like to see games that are rated well. Again, viral channels, so Twitter, Facebook, as much as possible, communicate with that user. Updates, very, very key. Have a plan in place. Always make sure that you have a roadmap defined. And yeah, this is a small little note. The App Store keeps changing. So no matter how you try to game it, there was a time when if you looked in the new releases, everything will be organized by letter. So there was a date not too long ago when we said let's have all our games start with the letter A. So that doesn't matter, right? So when it comes to naming your application, just focus on a great product. Do be careful with SEO where possible. Look out for keywords that people are searching for in the App Store. Use tools like Searchman to help you discover what people are looking at, and yeah, our target audience as well. See, it's a global market, so you launch a game about cricket, it probably will pick up in India. It definitely will pick up in India, probably in England, Australia as well. But know who you're talking to. Like we discovered, it was girls, or at least 50% girls. Try to incorporate features, functionality that they would appreciate. So we've got an update happening to Parking Frenzy that is cognizant of that fact. So there are going to be options for both girls and boys to actually have a better experience with the game. So I guess what I'd like to leave you with is, it's ultimately it's all about perseverance. To be really honest, it's about spending time refining the product. It'll take time, man. But once you have that hit, like we did with Parking Frenzy, then you're going to find that things start changing a lot. You begin So we promote another game from the GameSwin franchise. We do find that it typically gets picked up. So we know that there is an audience looking out for our games. So to all developers out there, do not fret too much about the marketing. Hopefully these tips over here can be used by you in some form or the other. Focus on a product. It need not necessarily be the best looking 3D experience ever. But you will find an audience, and you will find revenues coming in, which helps you grow your business. So, any questions? Shoot. I'm ready to take them on, and alternatively, I can be contacted by email. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, please, gentlemen here. Yeah.